Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Speech? Yeah, I don't think so. Just thought I would get kicked off here a little bit, kind of a soft launch. We're going to give people a few more minutes to roll in and download the client and just make sure you can actually hear me. So if you all can hear me, make sure to just say so in the chat room there. And Calvin says he can hear me, so that's good. And then I'll give myself a chance to get the slides up on the screen here as well. But like I said, we're going to wait a few more minutes before I start going through these. I see you've got a lot of people hanging out already in the stream, so welcome. Thank you. And you don't have to have a Twitch account to watch this. You can just view it in a browser as is, but you're going to get some benefit if you log into Twitch and use the chat room. We're going to have a giveaway, our normal giveaway, but we're going to use Twitch chat to give that away. And that's going to be the easiest way for you to ask questions to Bill. And also some other networking. The normal networking we do in person, we're going to have to try to make do over chat. Yeah, that's right, Calvin. I just want more Twitch followers. That's the whole reason I'm doing this, honestly. The more Twitch followers I have, the sooner I will rule the world. So it looks like some of you have used Twitch before, so that's good. But if you haven't, just giving you a little bit extra time here to sign up, log in, and get your bearings. I see we got Calvin, who's here. He's one of the organizers, Calvin A. Allen. Integer Man is also here. He is Matt Elon. I hope I'm saying that right. And I think I saw Alan earlier up in the chat. Alan Barber is also here, as far as I know. And I'm Matt Groves, in case you weren't aware. That's who I am. I got the pronunciation right. Fantastic. Thank you for that follow, Rainbow Freak 20. Normally there would be some fanfare on the screen for follows and stuff, but I figured I'd turn that off for user group presentation, so it's not distracting to Bill or to anybody else watching. Usually some animated GIFs and music and stuff like that plays, but I got that turned off. Yeah, I'm just going to make Bill stop. Every time someone follows, I'm going to interrupt him and be like, sorry, Bill, need to interrupt you, tell you that thank you for the follow. That's right. Hey, Eric. How's it going? Thanks for joining. Hope everyone's doing all right out there. No problem. Nothing better to do. Oh, that's nice, Eric. Glad you showed up because there's nothing better to do. Looks like we got about 21 people so far. It's pretty good, I'd say. I don't want to see that either. I don't think anybody wants to. It's a really nice day out today. Got to go outside with my son, do a little home baseball practice, and enjoy the weather. Super nice. So I hope you all had a chance to get out there and just take a walk or just enjoy the nice weather. Yeah, there was some serious rain last week, and I actually live right by a creek. And about once a year, it'll rise up about halfway through my backyard, and it'll be like a little mini river in my backyard for a few hours. But I kind of live on the top of a slope, so it's not like it floods my basement or anything. It's just really messes up the backyard. Thank you for the follow, and congratulations on signing up for Twitch there. I'm totally your data type. I have no idea, by the way, if we're going to do anything on Twitch next month. We're going to have to figure that out to see if this is the best way to do it or if there's some other alternate technology that will work better. I know Bill, our presenter today, was using a different tool, Zoom or Teams or something. Hang on, Bill, you're not.
Oh,
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Bill.
no, it's okay. I was using Neat for the OWASP meeting this morning. Well, at noon, and it was good. There's a little bit less. It's a meeting tool, right? So everyone's in the meeting. So
Yeah.
people did things like leave their mic on and stuff like that. This two-tool method might be better. I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar with Twitch. I don't do the whole, live coding thing like Matt's a master.
I don't know about that.
If you have not attended his live coding sessions, you're missing out. And I'm just not. I'm new to it, so I didn't want to try that first time out. But I've used Meet a lot, and it worked pretty good for us. I mean, I had to do a little bit of management, like when people logged in and didn't stay muted. There aren't a lot of tools for user management and stuff, but I don't know. It was okay, but it's a meeting. It's not a presentation. This is a presentation, so this is probably a better solution.
Yeah, I mean, it might be the case that maybe we use this and Twitch. Like we use a different tool so everyone can sort of be in a meeting, but we also stream it out to Twitch. So I don't know, something like that. And we've talked in the past about possibly live streaming these anyway, even with the in-person events. So maybe this is the first step towards that. But I mean, this is I think this is going okay for right now. I did one of these on Saturday. It was a similar kind of setup, and it was okay. We'll see how it goes. But if you all have feedback, definitely leave it in the comments there, and keep track of that. If you have any ideas, or I think Integer Man just suggested a Zoom, maybe he's using Zoom, so maybe we can try that. I don't know. We'll see. That's what we're using right now. Is with Bill and I, we're on Zoom, and I'm just broadcasting that out to Twitch.
The one nice thing about OWASP, it was a smaller group like this. We had about 25 people, and we got to have a conversation, which is you guys get to listen to Matt and I talk, but your stuff's all in the chat. Whereas we have several leaders in our group, and they all unmuted, and we talked about the technology we were talking about, which was very interesting. And I probably did record. Now that I think about it, I think I had it set to record, so I'll post it on YouTube. It was about basically like column level encryption in data sources, and it was fascinating stuff. But we had a couple of encryption gurus on there who got to drop a little bit of knowledge along with the speaker, so that was cool. And here Matt will have to read off what people say in the chat.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of which, there's a comment here from Slashwar that says, Bill is so distrusting, he won't use Twitch until he's had time to do a full review. So you're using me as a proxy, basically.
Basically, yeah. Well, actually, Zoom's the problem. I'm using it in a browser, but if you use the client, it has a tool that reads every application that's running. So an administrator of Zoom can look and see, like if you're running on an iPad or an Android phone or something, an administrator can see if you switch away from the meeting. So it literally reads every app you're running.
I see.
Which is freaking terrifying if you think about it. So running it in the browser is a good solution.
I see. All right. Well, we're about 10 minutes past here. We've got a pretty good group of people, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh, someone just says the presentation is frozen. Is anyone else experiencing that, or is it just Jay Petco?
It's working on my phone.
Okay, so Bill's looking at the stream on the phone. So okay, good. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. These are the normal kind of slides that we go through. I've modified them a little bit based on our unique circumstances, but if you're interested in CONDG and you're not already subscribed to one of these channels here, definitely do so. The Twitter The CONDG.org just goes to that meetup address there at the bottom. We're also on Facebook. See, only one screen is visible in slides. Yeah, I don't quite understand what you mean by that, Injure. It's just slides right now. Well, and my face. That's all we got right now. So, and so anyway, go to one of those, and you'll stay abreast of any changes or any planning we have for next month in terms of how we're going to do it. Okay, I do want to just say thanks to G2O, even though we're not at G2O's offices this month. Obviously, I do want to say thank you to them because they have been so good to us for the last couple of years or so. So I just want to thank them anyway for being so great. And we are having a raffle, as we usually do. We have a couple of JetBrains licenses to give away. So the way you're going to get entered to win this is a little different. We don't have tickets to hand out to you in person like we normally do. So the way I'm going to do this is I have my chatbot running right now, my Twitch chatbot. And anybody who puts in a chat message, basically, will be automatically entered to win one of these licenses. Now, more than one message is not going to mean you have a better chance of winning, okay? So all you have to do is chat at least once, and you're entered, all right? So don't just spam a bunch of chat messages in there. And you must be present to win near the end when we actually pick to give these licenses away, because we're going to need your contact information.
I'm not going to talk for a really long time, don't worry. For those of you who've been to my talks that were long, this isn't a long talk, so...
Okay, some other user groups I want to promote. Again, I have no idea what they're up to, if they're meeting, how they're meeting, but I do want to promote them anyway because it's some great groups, great people, and we always promote them. So Central Ohio Azure Group, you can go check them out there at coazure.org, see what they're up to, see if they're meeting, when they're meeting, how they're meeting, all that kind of stuff. But they usually meet second Monday at Microsoft Office in Columbus. Columbus App Dev User Group, same deal there. They meet every third Monday at Easton. Again, here in Central Ohio. Maybe some people are joining us from outside Central Ohio, but this is a Central Ohio user group, so that's some context for you there. The Buckeye SharePoint user group, same sort of deal here. Third Thursday at the Microsoft Office. Go check that group out. That's buckeyespug.com. And the PASS organization for SQL Server, you can check them out second Thursday at IGS in Dublin. That's a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. You can go check them out there, see what they're doing, how they're doing it, and so on. Let's Talk IT Columbus. This is a relatively new group. They meet at Easton at the Improving offices there. And if you want to get information about that, you can contact Aaron Petrie. His email address is there, or you can just go to their meetup URL right there on the screen. All right. This is the upcoming agenda, upcoming calendar for events. Tonight is Bill Sempf here with Snips and Snails and Puppy Dog Tales. And I don't know if this is exactly up to date, but we've got a few meetings, a few topics scheduled for the next few months. Some of these are subject to change. Calvin says this is out of date, so okay, this is at least mildly wrong. But we do have some spots to fill coming months. Hopefully we'll be back in person meeting, but we may not be, so be prepared to present remotely. But if you're interested in presenting a topic, it's .NET related or relatively close to .NET related, contact one of us, me, Calvin. I'll give you my email address here soon. Me, Calvin, or Alan, or Matt. Just contact us here or on Twitter or whatever's easy for you and let us know. We've got a pretty good lineup going so far, but we have a few more spots to fill. So Matt says that next month is GraphQL with .NET Core. Very cool. And that's going to be Bhaskar who'll be presenting that. So that's what we have up on the docket for next month. Looks like Matt must be bumped to a later date. All right, now here's another awkward situation here. We usually ask people to raise their hands if they are hiring. We don't really have that ability right now. So what I would ask you to do is, if you're looking for work, this is still something very important for us to do, especially now. If you're looking for work, or if you are looking to hire people, you can use the chat channel here to communicate with each other and figure that out. If you don't want to do that, if you're nervous about doing that in a public sort of setting, you can email me. There's my email address right there. I'm happy to make that connection. If you're hiring or if you're looking for a position, I can just email me and we can keep it sort of behind the scenes. I'm happy to do that. But of course, feel free to use the chat room there if you're hiring or if you're looking for a position. I'll leave that up there for a second. And you can continue to do that during the chat, during the whole session. That's totally fine. Bill can't even see it really while he's presenting, so don't worry about distracting him. Just go ahead and use the chat. Yes, literally email me at mgroves.com. Yes, that's my literal email address. All right, and last slide here. If you're looking to help us out, I mean, we're pretty good with the staffing right now, but we can always use more help, more voices. You can contact one of us here as pictured. Talk with us. Again, you can email me and I will pass it on to the rest of the group, or you can just converse in the chat there. It's totally fine. And we have lots of different ways you can help. If you just want to help find speakers, you can help with streaming if you have suggestions for that. If you have other ideas, we'd love to hear it. So feel free to reach out to us. All right, that's it with the slides. Anything else I wanted to talk about? Oh, yes. So with questions, if you have questions for Bill, put them in the chat there, and then he may be monitoring them on his own, but he's also going to pause at various points in the session, and I can read those questions out to Bill as they come in. So anything pops into your mind, feel free to just drop it there in the chat room, and I will convey this to him. So I think that's it. We're ready to go, Bill? All set?
Yep.
Hopefully you all can see Bill's slide and Bill.
I'm watching on my phone, which is really funny, by the way. I mean, I wish you could see my setup, but I'm out of cameras now to show you what I'm looking at. It's very amusing. But yes, I can see. I'm not going to sit and read the chat because it's really small,
Yeah.
and I'm blind as a bat.
Okay.
So
it looks like the chat's going right over your head, so I'm going to try to move that around as well. Move it down here, because I'm going to go away in just a second. Okay. All right. I'm going to put myself on mute and take myself off the screen and hand it over to you, Bill. Normally I'd say a round of applause, but we'll just take that as implied.
Thank you very
Take
much.
it away.
So this is weird, huh? I want to add to Matt's list of groups to attend and mention Columbus OWASP. It's the Open Web Application Security Project, which is I'm wearing my shirt from OWASP, and that is what in the end this talk is going to be about. No spoilers, sorry, but that's what we're talking about. OWASP has 3 goals. One is they have projects, which we're going to talk about at length at the end of the talk. 2, they have conferences, which are obviously mostly canceled right now. And 3, they have chapter meetings, and there's 197 chapters throughout the world, I think, if I remember correctly. I think now. And one of them is in Central Ohio, and I run it with Connie Matthews. If you happen to know her, she runs a training company called Raincon. And we have our meetings all over the place. We sometimes we have at Cardinal, sometimes we have them over at Improving. Sometimes we have them at Microsoft. Sometimes we have them at Cover My Meds. We move around all the time, and we have a great time. We are the 4th Thursday of the month, so we often will conflict a little bit with this group, unfortunately, because sometimes we meet at lunch and sometimes we meet in the evening. But even if we meet at lunch, not a lot of people can dedicate both blocks. You know what I mean? So it's not awesome, but I inherited it, and that's where it was, and that's what we get. So I would recommend that you come and check us out. If you are a Meetup user, go ahead and subscribe to us. I don't spam a lot. I know Meetup spams, but I don't send a lot of messages out or anything. But you can keep an eye on our topics, and if something shows up that's of interest to you, then you can pop on. The risk talk we had today, like I was saying earlier, was just fascinating from a development perspective. And keep in mind, OWASP isn't a general security group. It is a uh, application security group. It's specifically for web tech, but we also do a fair amount with mobile, and service oriented stuff and IoT. So it's a big, huge organization. 41,000 people on the mailing list supplying content and whatnot. So it is a good group. I highly recommend you check into it if you have even, and you all should, even the vaguest interest in application security. But today we're going to talk about your supply chain. Um, and supply chain is a really interesting topic right now. And I got to tell you, even though it's oddly relevant this moment, I picked this topic for my kind of my 2020 um, research project before any of this happened. So I didn't know how relevant this was going to be, but if anybody's following the news, supply chain is becoming a thing because if you go to the grocery store, you can't get bread, and you can't get bread because nobody's going to the bread place to make bread, and there's nobody to stock the shelves, and people can't get to work to stock the shelves because there's nobody to drive. And so clearly I mean, you can see where the just-in-time inventory system with physical inventory becomes a problem very, very quickly. That is not what we are going to talk about today, even though it might be forefront on everyone's mind. If you would like to talk about it at another time, I'm perfectly good with it. I have most of a minor in economics and love supply chain as a topic and can talk about graphs and stuff until your face falls off. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to talk about it. But that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is all the pieces that you use to make your software come together and the security implications of that. That's what we're here to talk about today. Um, so we're gonna break that down a little bit, talk about the problem. Anybody who's been to one of my talks knows how this works. We'll talk about the problems, and I'll complain for a while. Then we'll talk about the solutions. The only bummer is that I don't have a cool demo for the end like I normally do because they just released the new version of the software like 4 days ago, and I, because of everything that's going on, have not had time to build it. So we'll have to do a follow-up video or something where I demonstrate the software. But that's okay. We'll get by, and we can show each other pictures of our cats or whatever at the end of the talk. All right. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Bill Sempf. I've been a software developer in Columbus since the early '90s. I'm been a web guy for a very long time. I am a Microsoft MVP and have done a lot of work in the .NET stack, and even before that in VB Script and Asp Classic. Before that in Perl. Before that in C using CGI. I was writing for the web when you still had to download the web server from CERN and compile it. So I've been around for a long time. You can see the gray hair and the fact that I'll have a beer while talking. And I've been around for a while. And about 10 years ago, I was building a lot of software for the for Windows 8 using JavaScript over .NET, and that was horrible. Anybody who did it knows what I'm talking about. And I really needed to stop coding for a while. I got burned out because it was rough. So I reached out to a friend of mine and said, "Hey, listen, is there any security work I can do?" So I've been the security guy on the web team for a long, long time, going back to '99 maybe. It's just been a hobby of mine. And he said, "Yeah." This is Jim Manico for anybody who's familiar with the security community. Said he said, "Yeah, there's this company out in California that has all kinds of work, and it's all remote, so you don't have to go out there." And I called them, and they're like, "Oh, we don't have any dev work right now, but will you do some testing?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll do some testing. That's not that big of a deal. I've done it before." So I got set up with their process, and I haven't looked back since. So that is what I do now. I still code every day, one way or the other. But if for a living, I am a vulnerability analyst. I take web applications and I test them for security vulnerabilities. Um, and it's fascinating, very fast paced work. I've been an independent since basically the beginning. So I'm used to projects that block, 6 months or 12 months or 14 months. You guys are all developed folks. You folks are all developers. You know how that works. In the security industry, it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's very fast paced, very pick up something, check out the document in the morning on Monday, write the report on Friday, crack open a beer. Next Monday, new project, right? Bang, 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 bang. Very fast paced. I like it quite a bit. Personally, I'm obviously working from my home office. As far as people I noticed in the chat earlier were asking about safety and security, we are uniquely positioned to deal with a situation like this. We live on 5 acres of woods out in the corner of Grove City, and have our kids are homeschooled, and both Gabrielle and I work out of the house. So the kids are like, I don't understand what the big deal is. This is normal. Yeah, okay. Not for everybody else, folks. It's not normal. That is that's what we've been doing is sitting here and watching the news and going, huh, a lot. That's been our deal. So anyway, that's me. Here's what we're going to talk about. And like I said, I don't have a juicy demo for the end, so this isn't going to be a an hour and a half long talk or anything. But that's okay. We'll get the basic ideas down. Excuse me. Um, we're going to talk about the software supply chain and what it looked like from the beginning. We're going to talk a little bit about how we got in the situation we're in today, and then we're going to talk about some solutions. We're going to talk about code review a little bit and the realities of that, and then we're going to talk about what tools we might be able to use to solve this problem. And that should be that should be some pretty good stuff. So those of you who have been to my talks know that I tend to quote Lauren Ipsum a lot. Lauren Ipsum is a kid's book. It's a 136-page book about software engineering. That's for kids. It's written for a 10-year-old. And it's about Lauren Ipsum. And she travels around this fantastic land where people build their towns based on common software engineering patterns. So the brute forcers live in a town where they pile rocks on top of rocks until they collapse, and then they pile more rocks on top of those rocks until they collapse. And then there are the composers that build these beautiful spires, and we'll talk about this a little bit, because they use the tools of other people to build things upon them. And this book is uniquely positioned to describe the kinds of things you run into in the supply chain. And of course, Lawrence, for those of you who are surfing Reddit instead of looking at the slides, Lauren says, Lauren Ipsum had been lost in the woods all morning. The poor girl didn't know where she was or where she was going. And that's kind of the point of this whole talk, is you can't even get started understanding where you're going unless you know where you came from. And you'll see what I mean when we get there. So let's talk about the software supply chain for a little bit, just for a few minutes. Back in the day, when I got started doing software development, which was probably, I would say, 84, was as a hobbyist, I was a kid still. I was born in 71. So we would type programs into the computer from a magazine. That's how we built games and stuff. You would literally type the software into the machine. I mean, from a magazine. In the industry, the people who were working professionally back then, they were using documentation, right? And the documentation would say, here is a block of code that does what you want to do using the libraries we have provided for you. And you would type them in and you would run them. So that was your supply chain, right? You bought a product from a vendor and they would teach you how to use it using documentation. It's pretty straightforward. So fast forward about 7 years, and we get to the point where the personal computer era becomes standardized, and we get these these blocks of operating system knowledge that we could leverage. We understood what Unix was. We understood what Windows was. We understood what, well, DOS. I mean, if you want to talk about that, or Mac OS in the early stages, those were known quantities and provided these high level APIs that we could build tools for other people. So that's what happened. People would build tools that you could buy on things like floppy disks and stuff. I'm sure there's people in the crowd that remember this. It's so weird not be able to. You have no idea if you haven't done a lot of presenting how weird it is to just talk randomly to a camera. It's very odd. But I'm sure there's people who know what I'm talking about, where you would literally go to Micro Center and buy a disk with UI components on it and load them up in VB3 or in well, there's a bunch of examples, and toss them in there to make things work. That was where our supply chain came from. We didn't have to write a file handler from scratch anymore. Even if our operating system didn't provide one, which of course Windows did really early on, but it wasn't very good until it got to Windows XP. So other people would build file handlers to help people like upload files or parse files or handle images or whatever. And you would literally, go to the store and buy a disk with the component on it and plug it in your machine and then import it in your program and run it. So that was a supply chain. So now we have this two-level supply chain, right? Where we've got the operating system was providing some stuff for us, and then the tool vendors were providing some stuff for us, and then of course we were writing some software on top of that. Well, then came the open source movement about 20 years ago, 15 years ago. All right, we started to get to the point where people were giving away software for free, and tools like GitHub and Bitbucket showed up to give us some solutions to products for free. I mean, it was community driven tools. So you would you would buy a component from a tool vendor. You have an operating system, right? And they're relevant development tools. You buy a component. Then on top of that, you would use some cool new hotness that you heard so and so from wherever built, and everybody was talking about it. So you toss that on there, and you say, so now you got this, and then you build your software. So now we're up to 4 tiers, right? Well, then somebody had the really bright idea to manage that. And on the uh, initially, initially that sounds awesome, right? Because you look and you go, well, yeah, of course I want to manage it. I just want to go and search for, hey, I need a library for Alexa. Oh, I gotta be careful not to say that. I need a library for the Echo. Um, and it just shows up right there in NuGet, right? And I'll click, oh, got that. So now we have the tool, we have the operating system, the tool written to build the operating system. We have the purchase components we have open source components we're using, and then a manager that's just making it super easy for us to download whatever we want. And that sounds awesome. But the problem is that we have we have some issues with reliance, right? So, not picking on China specifically, but right now the situation we're looking at right now with hardware makes it very clear at what we're dealing with software, right? We depend on other people to keep things up to date, produce. keep the software running the way it's supposed to be running. And when they don't, we run into problems, right? We're much of the software is that we're building is actually built using pieces that someone else wrote, just like much of our hardware is built using pieces that someone else built. So we run into the supply chain issue. Um, with hardware, it's more that we can't necessarily get the stuff we need. With software, it's that we don't completely understand how it works. So looking back a little bit, right? You look at viruses. So I mentioned going to Micro Center and buying a disk with a file uploader component on it. There was one that came with a wonderful virus called the Elk Cloner. It was written in '82 when he was a high school student. He uploaded it onto a set of components to build games with. He packaged it and sold it as shareware, and it would go and uh, uh, bust up the Apple II operating system, where I spent a lot of my time back in that day, and then spread itself via removable media like a floppy disk. Um, One of the first um, uh, network viruses was discovered by Stoll and written about in the um, Cuckoo's Egg. Uh, this is software written by Marcus Hess, not the Cuckoo's Egg. The software didn't really have a name, but this piece had software that had taken advantage of known flaws in Unix to take over machines over time, right? Equifax, of course. This is a terrible slide. I'm sorry. I'll make this better eventually. Um, Struts is a great example, right? Where did the Equifax, for those of you who don't know where that came about, I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard about the Equifax vulnerability and the breakdown there. 165 million, I think, credit reports lost in that. That wasn't a coding error by Equifax. That was because they didn't keep their version of struts up to date. So it was a supply chain issue. All of these, all of these are supply chain issues. I'm going to get a disk. Oh, the disk has a virus. I'm going to use the internet. Oh, there's somebody who's going to be able to break into things. I'm going to use struts because it makes it really easy to write software. Oh, except it has a flaw and I failed to keep it up to date. Um, Another great example, and going back in Windows back in the day, is those of you who have been around long enough to remember DLL hell. Components, depending upon components, as developers and operators, we had a huge problem keeping things up to date. But there's more to it than that. We didn't even know, and this is going back once again to the '90s and early 2000s. We didn't even know what all of these components were doing. We couldn't even review the source code then because they were usually compiled components, and we had no clue what kind of software problems we were running into from a security perspective. I had a funny conversation where I was chatting about this on Twitter. And Mike Letterly, I said, I just built 2 slides about DLL management and Microsoft development in the '90s. I'm having a PTSD attack. Please help. Mike says, slips use of NuGet. Oh no. Yeah. So what did we do? We decided to manage it, make it even easier for everybody to get access to these tools. And that caused as many problems as, or it causes many problems as it's solved from a security perspective. So what happened? What happened, right? Well, what happened was, first, the ubiquitous internet, right? When I started coding, I spent most of my time not connected to a network. Even though I was writing network software, I had a standalone laptop and I would code the software and load it up and try it, right? But now everyone's connected all the time. So you go, I need the left pad. Let's go search for that. And then well, there's a component that does it. I don't have to write that. Fantastic. Click. And it goes from there. We have public source control, GitHub, Bitbucket, the other tools like that. I'm not trying to pick on any particular vendor. This is a philosophical problem, not a vendor problem. Um, those tools make it so easy for us to find the pieces we need in open source, which is the third piece which once again, open source is wonderful. I love it. I'm so glad, but it's so easy to use that we run into problems with security in the individual pieces. And then finally, we have the continuous integration, continuous deployment problem. So when you click build, your tools go on the ubiquitous internet and get from public source control the open source software, the latest version that may or may not be exactly what you thought it was. And as we'll talk about in just a minute, no one looks at that code. So you end up inheriting all the security flaws. And that is what happened. So I promised Matt I would stop at every section break and let's see if there's any questions. So I'm doing that now, and I'll have this in a beer. Well, war stories are good though. I like that. Some if I'll have contact information and stuff at the end, so make sure you reach out and maybe we'll make a big blog post at the end. Well, okay, so click once by itself, it's not a problem, right? But as long as we'll go through the rest of the talk. As long as the software that was written that's installed via click once was carefully reviewed. It's the software development process that's the problem, not necessarily the deployment by itself. I pick on CI/CD because that's an automatic way to update everything. It goes and updates, it grabs your build and updates all your node libraries and everything else like that. So the click once installation by itself isn't a problem as long as the software is reviewed. But as we'll talk about in a minute, it doesn't work that way.
Just a follow-up comment there. WPF app calling a secure API, I think, is what Eric is the one who asked about the click once installation.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's. I mean, it's not specifically the fact that that app is click once, right? It's the app itself. I mean, you could install that app by downloading it or by anything. It's the app, and you say secure API. Okay, so it's using TLS. Great. I'm a big fan. But what else is happening there that you don't know about yet? And that's you watch. I'll go over some more stuff, and you see what you think when you're done with that. When I've covered some more stuff.
Okay. No more questions, Bill. You can carry on if you want to.
All right. So, um, we move very quickly in software development. Okay. Um, my my wife has a line she likes: silent and listen have the same letters. We don't sit and watch what we're doing in software development very often anymore. So it becomes extremely easy to just try to make the features work, right? We get the business requirements and we make the features work. So we end up with a situation that our packages are mind-blowingly complicated. And that's what it is that I'm talking about here. So there's a really cool tool called npm to dot, and it will take a um, a package in npm and help you to view the dependencies of it. As it turns out, every single time I run it, I go cry in a corner. It's just it's horrible every single time, and it's funny. Now I have not tried this on a Zoom talk before. Well, actually, I did try it with Matt. Let me see if it's going to work. Okay, it will. Good. So there's a for anybody who's surfing Reddit instead of watching. There's actually a video playing. It's me mistyping in npm-install MS-SQL, and you can see all of the dependencies that it's loading. That's how easy it is to do this, right? um is we get to where and this happens automatically. I mean, I did that manually, but this happens automatically now, where depending on dependencies of dependencies, that 4-layer stack that I talked about has become 5 and 6 and 7 over time, because because we have the public source control and because we have the open source. And once again, I'm not complaining about public source control. I think it's wonderful. I participate in it. In fact, all the projects I'm going to talk about at the end are open source and have dependencies. What's important here is that you realize what you're dealing with. And I'm thinking I might have a flaw in my slide deck. I'm not sure if this is the same. That's the same. That's the same thing. Okay, sorry about that. New talk. Got bugs. This is a better one though. I wonder if I recorded it twice. I don't know. All right. Anyway, so here's a great example. So we're talking about OWASP earlier. So at OWASP, I run two things. I am the content manager for the Columbus chapter. We talked about that at the beginning. We meet the fourth Thursday, same as the .NET group. And because of that, I have to maintain some web content, just like Matt and Calvin and whoever else is on the team has to maintain their web content for the .NET developers group. So for years, it was on a Wikimedia site at OWASP.org. But it became extremely cumbersome. So a bunch of us just moved on our own to meetup.com because it was so much easier to do things like track who was there, which we need to report back to the group because we don't get funding if we don't have meetings. And it was just so much easier. And also, as many of you probably know, Wikimedia is just, or MediaWiki rather, is just horrible to use a lot of the time. So eventually, OWASP corporate, the big group, got the memo, and they said, all right, we're going to set up a big meetup.com account on their charity group, and everybody can have a sub account, and we're going to move everything to GitHub pages. The whole website's moving to GitHub because all the projects are on GitHub anyway. So my chapter site and also my project, which is, strangely enough, as you can see on the screen, the .NET project, got moved to GitHub. So as I was writing this talk, I got a security advisory from GitHub. Oh, a dependency you have is vulnerable. So here's a space where the social the public source control is beneficial, right? Because GitHub steps in and goes, hey, wait, we can scan these things and find problems in advance. I don't even use that gem. That's upstream of me in the OWASP main page. I mean, talk about dependencies. I can't even fix this flaw. I don't have permissions to do it. It is literally a component of a component I'm using that I have to use, and I have to wait for them to fix it. Do you see where I'm coming from here? That's the problem we're running into, is that we've got dependencies of dependencies of dependencies, and we weren't reviewing them before. And now we get in positions where we can't even review them. Um, you look at tools like, here's an example for Dapper, right? It's an object mapper, object relational mapper. 25, almost 26,000 repositories use it. I mean, are all of those software developers reviewing Dapper for potential vulnerabilities? Well, the answer is, of course, no. No, there's no way you wouldn't have the time or the ability to do that. And that's where the pieces load in as far as the realities for regular software developers today. We're depending upon pieces that we don't and can't review, and we are inheriting problems like the struts flaw that punked Equifax, right? It wasn't Equifax's fault per se. I mean, yeah, okay, they were running a 6-month out of date version of struts. Yeah, is anybody here volunteer to have me look at your machine and make sure you're using up to date versions of all your components? I bet you're not. I'm not trying to give Equifax an easy time. I mean, they hold very sensitive data. They need to be more careful. There's no question about that. But the fact is that this is a global problem because of the way we're developing software these days. So we get to talk about code review, and I'm in a blue screen, so I'll stop for a second and see if there's any questions. Matt, do you see anything on there? Man, that text is small. Whew.
I'm not seeing any questions that have come in.
Okay.
Just some good comments and some
Okay.
more war
Read them
stories and
off.
stuff. But I mean, just people talking about even if it's patched, you'll still have to wait for things to be fixed downstream, right?
Exactly.
And keep repeating as far down the chain.
Yep.
And deep dependency map is a nightmare. Basically, is the thought there.
Yep. Absolutely. So, good comments. Thank you. Um, so, what we have is an ownership problem as far as the open source community is concerned. Hey, look, I wrote this neat. Well, I should, in case somebody's surfing Reddit instead of watching the slides. This is Lauren once again. Well, actually, it's one of the people she's talking to in the book. I put little ideas together to make bigger ones. Then I put those ideas together to make bigger and bigger ones, and then I put my name on them. And once again, I am not in any way trying to dismiss open source as a good idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. But people write something and talk about how cool it is. Oh, this is really shiny. They move on to something else, right? So you go as a software developer, you say you do your due diligence, you look around, you pick a solid looking, let's say JavaScript platform for the front end, right? React or one of those. But but it's not React. It's this one because it does a couple of features you really want. And you pick it and you use it. And then that app becomes a brownfield application, right? So you're maintaining it. But the entire app is driven by some tool that's written by some group of people somewhere who could just give up on it any day and move on to something shinier. And because part of the reason that we participate in public source control, is to fill out that graph on GitHub, right? We want people to, we tell the recruiters, hey, go look at my GitHub repo. And so when that happens, if you're depending upon that platform for something genuinely important, like, oh, I don't know, credit reports for everyone in the freaking country, you have to worry about that. And I mean, Struts is Oracle, right? They're a pretty big company. Yes, they have their security problems, and I am not their biggest fan by any stretch. But in general, when things are found in Oracle platforms, they fix them. In Equifax didn't update quickly enough, and all this is true. But It's the quicker things that become the problems when we depend on moving fast and breaking things. That's that's great until you actually have real data. And then that's how stuff gets broken into. The supply chain messes you up. So this slide is in here for when I give this talk to security crowds, not developer crowds. I'm pretty sure I don't need to talk to you guys about this, you folks, about the software development lifecycle. But it is important because when you're between requirements and design, um, someone, a lead dev, or if you happen to have an architect or whatever, makes decisions about what tools are going to be used. And that is remarkably important. One of the things that I warn when I do training for software development and security, I warn about is architecture astronauts. And I'm sorry if anyone in the audience falls into this category. I'm not attacking you personally, I swear. But there's lots of people who want to do the neat new thing because they're super smart and they can't. And that's great. I understand. But this is how these problems occur. Is you get the neat new thing, and the neat new thing is might solve your problems, might have the requirements that you need. Your users might love it, but it must be reviewed for security and testing, and then it must be kept up to date. And the minute it isn't, it needs to be gotten rid of. So one of the big things that and I'm sure I don't even want to look at the chat when I say this, but back in the 2005 timeframe when I was still working mostly as a software architect, one of the things that I would do regularly when I was brought in on a project that had a security problem or performance problem is rip out all the dependency injection that was in there for the unit testing and make them do unit testing manually, because it was both a security problem and a performance problem. It doesn't belong in unpopular opinion of the week, maybe the year. It doesn't belong in production software. It doesn't belong there. And so you have to make those hard decisions, right? Um, there are tools that help you with this. This is dependency graph. It's a tool that helps you find the dependencies of the tools that you're working within. That gives you an idea of what kind of a mess you're running into, and it's very useful. This is another tool that I've forgotten. Oh no, this is the number of downloads for React. 20, almost 30 million downloads last month for React. Are those people reviewing what in React they're using, or what in Log4j they're using, or the security of the individual pieces that they're using? Log4j, a particularly big thing, though it's obviously what a third the downloads is React for last month, but um, it's very, very easy to expose your logs publicly using Log4j, especially if you're using a document-oriented database. Sorry, Matt, I know your product is good. I've worked with it, but in general, it's still very easy to do. It's very easy to expose those things publicly, and that becomes a real, honest to goodness problem. Yeah, so 52,317 dependencies on React.js. And when I took the screenshot, it had been updated 6 hours ago. Did you go review it when it got updated? I didn't. So testing, I'm gonna do my thing and go back up, and everybody hates when I do this. Testing becomes so important, right? It says in my slide, make sure the software works, but there has to be some security testing in place. There has to be, because we're getting ourselves in this position, right? You run into these places where you've got the software that's just leaving things in plain sight, right? So this is a code example, code review example, right? On line 20 here, you look at that, the quoted string. and I got notes. There's a search for a double quote within the string. If it's found, the loop in line 22 copies until a second double quotation mark is found. So if a string is entered that only has one double quote character, the loop will keep copying, resulting in a stack overflow. And then I can do a nop sled and take over the server. And I do that. I have a tool called Metasploit that makes it really, really easy to write a block of code that I can use to do that. It's non-trivial, but it's certainly within the realm of most attackers' abilities. Of course, one of the most famous code review flaws, some of you probably recognize this from one of my other talks, is go to fail, right? If you look, I can't point at my screen. Normally I would, but you could clearly see it says mistake. This line should not be here, where it says go to fail twice, right? If well, you're all programmers, you know what's going to happen here. No matter what, you're going to go to fail, right? And you're going to skip the raw verify. And that, of course, is famously from iOS. So for something like 18 months, not a single Apple mobile product actually checked to make sure it was under SSL when it said it was under SSL. And that's a code review flaw, right? Somebody copied and pasted some code and failed to review it. And that's what we run into when we're dealing with it. Just a couple examples to keep y'all going. So the question you have to answer is, okay, so what? We're going to spend half our time doing code review. Well, the answer is no, but I'll stop and see if there's any questions real quick.
Yeah, we got one question coming in, Bill. This may be a bit of a rhetorical question, but from Ntomi. Hope I'm saying that right. I have a question on if software must be reviewed for safety and security. Why are so many regex engines fine with Perl style engines rather than I don't know what this is, McNaughton, Yamada, Thompson, DFA that would allow it to not suffer from RDoS attacks? So I guess it's a why question there.
Yeah, that's a little bit more technical than I can handle without doing a little bit of research.
Okay.
Good question though. Globally speaking, yeah, I mean there are. So people ask me all the time. I'm gonna deflect the question a little bit, but I'll look back at the chat and follow up with you after I do a little bit of research on it. But I'm going to deflect it a little bit and talk generally. So we're going to talk a little bit about, like, in here in just a minute, about doing code review and automated pieces in a bit. But there's a reason why static analysis engines aren't open source. Okay, you can't buy a automatic code review tool, so an automatic static analysis tool, right? You can't download one from GitHub. It works. There's a reason, and the reason is because it is so unbelievably difficult to write analysis tools given the way language structures are today. We've put ourselves in a position where, and regex is a great example, right? The multitudes of regex engines out there put it into an incredibly sophisticated situation as far as writing the rules to look at software code and find out if there's flaws. And because of that, it is incredibly expensive to build the rules. That's so I'm giving you an example of why what you say is I mean, it's right. And that's just one symptom. What I'm talking about is a symptom of the problem that you brought up. But I'll dig into that a little bit and get back to you via, I don't know. I'll post a blog post or something.
Yeah, maybe I'll leave a comment on the meetup. Maybe you can
Oh,
post that question
that's
on
great,
Antomi.
yeah.
Post that question there. Another comment coming in about, speaking of static analysis tools. I don't know if this counts, but ndepend is another one that's recommended here in the chat. And there's a recommendation that's SonarQube. That's QUBE. That might be open source. It might be that might be exception that proves the rule there.
Yeah, there are. I don't know if SonarQube's open source, but I know it's free. But it might be open source. And end-depend is good. And we're going to talk about something similar to end-depend at the end here. So that's good stuff. Um, so complexity is the enemy of security, right? That's kind of what we're getting into here. The more you depend on the dependencies, the faster it is to write your software, but the harder it is to secure it. Does that make sense? I mean, that's what that's what we're faced with is we're asked to write code really fast that works really well and is super pretty. Well, the end result's pretty anyway. I know the code often isn't, at least mine isn't. And the more we use the open source tools, and purchase tools, and the even going back into the API tools, though those are a lot less risky than the others, the less the less we have to struggle to make the software, but the more we have to struggle to secure the software. All right. So, and once again, for anybody surfing Reddit instead of the slides, I've Lauren's up saying, "Really? Well, I'm a composer too. I take big ideas and make them smaller." That is something I would like everyone to take under advisement. It won't secure your software, but complexity is the enemy of security. The more third party tools you use, the more you have to be vigilant about testing, and you've got to decide if the trade-off, right? So the more time you have to spend coding versus the more time you have to spend testing is worth it. And you and your team can make that call. But the main point of this whole talk is you need to make that call. You need to do your due diligence, do your research, and decide where things lie. But there are tools that help, and I did downplay the static analysis engine. So I want to clarify that a little bit because people were talking about independent SonarQube, which is really funny. I'm actually using both of those tools on projects like professionally right now, setting them up for people. So I do know they exist. I'm with it, and there are tools out there. We're going to talk about some of them. But in general, the the open source static analysis tool set is only as good as the community is willing to make it. And I got two great examples for you. So the first one I highly recommend to everyone on here, because I know a lot of you are probably front end people. No, not everybody in the crowd, but a lot of you is retire.js. I use it every single day. And it is basically a big JSON file of out of date JavaScript files, and then a set of tools to scan websites to look for them. You can install it in your browser. It has a Zap plugin, Z Attack Proxy, the security scanner. It has a Burp plugin, Burp Suite, the other main security scanner for applications. It has a command line tool you can use in your CI/CD. It is fantastic. It is 100% open source. And it is completely dependent on the community to keep its database up to date. And you know what? They do it. They keep it up to date. And on the JavaScript side of things, on the front end, right? So this is for front end code. This isn't for like JavaScript in the back end, like Node or the whatever the TypeScript tool is that does server software. This is for front end stuff. It is phenomenal. And I mean, the minute that like jQuery, for instance, pushes a new version and deprecates an old version, someone goes in and fixes the database under retire.js. Highly recommended on GitHub, incredibly blindingly easy to use, very strongly recommended. So I had this idea. I told you I'm a vulnerability analyst. I test software for a living. As it turns out, I test mobile software too. I got asked to, if I could, at one point, and I thought I had like a block of time in my working life where I could learn something new. And, I mean, I got lucky that way, and I was like, you know what, I will learn mobile security. I might as well. So I took like a month and a half and set up a mobile lab, and I've got just I don't have any sitting around here, so I'm not doing any testing right this minute for those. But I've got piles of mobile devices and all kinds of weird things set up to do things. But one of the pieces that I noticed, and this was back 4 or 5 years ago, is that nobody was looking at out of date components. So I started retire.apk, which is on my GitHub, and it is um, based on completely on retire.js, and I use their same JSON format and use their similar engine, and um, the difference between retire.apk and retire.js is the community that's involved with it, because I'm not a super big community builder type person. Getting people involved to update the database with out of date components is a little harder. Plus, there's a lot of Android components, so it is a little bit more challenging in some ways. Um, but this kind of piece, this kind of ability to take something, because APK files, you can disassemble them and then code review them. I mean, the manifest files include all the components that are in there, so you can just scan the manifest file, compare it against a JSON file of out of date components, and get a report done. But it's only as good as the data in that JSON file. That's the key piece. It's only as good as its database. So once this is the dichotomy here, right? The open source community is the problem in a way, but it's also the solution, and that's rough. That's really rough. So one of my goals for this year is to make a big push for the retire.apk tools. I've actually already reached out to the people who manage retire.js, and maybe I'll even see if we can merge it into that project or something, take advantage of their community. I don't know. If anybody has any ideas, get in touch with me. But the main piece I want to talk about is dependency track. So dependency track is a lot like ndepend. It is, somebody mentioned that in the chat, Matt said. So what it is it's a smart supply chain component analysis platform, right? And you plug it into your CI/CD process, and it builds reports on the backend components you're using that are out of date. Once again, it's only as good as the data in its database, but it does work for Java and .NET, and I believe Ruby and PHP, and I've forgotten some of the other ones. I probably should have made a list somewhere. I'm sorry, but you can super easy go look it up. It's on GitHub. It's an OWASP project, and it's incredibly easy to download and use. But I didn't do it in time to give you a demo. I'm sorry, because of everything that's happened. I had some family obligations that tied me up, and I never got my virtual machine fully working, so I can't show you. And I'm sorry, because I'd like to, but I really genuinely recommend everybody go out and take a look at it, because this is something you can truly plug into your deployment process and check the dependencies you're using for out of date pieces. Also, if you are familiar with the supply chain, all right, if you're involved in an open source project, or you know the realities of in-depth pieces from Maven or from npm or from NuGet or any of these other package managers, you know how they work, you know what they're working for, go participate in the project. One of the most, like I said, these tools are only as good as the community behind them who's keeping them up to date. That's the dichotomy we're dealing with, right? It's the open source products that are the problem in a lot of cases, though sometimes it's the vendors too. And the open source community is going to be the solution as well. So go take a look, use it at least, participate at best, and we can solve this problem using tools like this. and I think it's a solvable problem. So with no demo, that's all I've got. But I'll take whatever other questions you've got, or we can show each other pictures of our cats. Actually, we can't do that because we're doing the Zoom Twitch thing. But you can post pictures of your cat in the chat or something. I don't know.
I've got a few that have been sent in. I have this ready to go on the browser
Yeah.
there. I don't think you'll see them, Bill, but
Okay.
you can watch this recording later. I do have a couple questions that had come in. Well, first, I have a comment about the dependency injection comment that you made. That
Yeah.
I think you're going to get letters on that one.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
know.
pretty strong opinion.
Yeah. I've been beaten up more than once. I'm on that. I know, and that's okay. You can yell at me all you want. That's fine.
Another comment from earlier about open source tools, ASAN, ASAN, that may be part of the LLVM core, was what Antomi is mentioning. That's another possibly an open source tool there.
I don't know that one.
Okay.
I'll look that up. Okay, I made note.
Bobcat has a question about the retire.js tool that you mentioned, and basically who decides that they're out of date, I guess, is the question there. And the follow-up to that is that geared towards vulnerabilities, or is it just out of date stuff?
It's geared towards vulnerabilities, and it's based on the vendor, the producer of the software. So when like jQuery UI, when they file a CVE, someone goes in to the retire.js database and enters that version as vulnerable. So when I run my static scans, when I'm doing testing, I don't have to go look for the versions. It just tells me, oh, they're running, jQuery UI 1.11.6, or I pulled that number out of my ear, but you get the idea. And it has known vulnerability, and here's where it is. And that's where the JSON format of that database, it holds all that information. So that's how the process works. Someone finds a vulnerability in the tool, the team for the tool updates the tool based on the CVE. For those who aren't security people, CVE is the common vulnerability enumeration. It is a big list of flaws in software. I don't remember the URL off the top of my head for some reason. But I'm sure you can Google like CVE vulnerability or something, and it will come up. It's easy to find, and you can that's what happens. Somebody discovers a vulnerability, they file a CVE, which is it's a NIST project. Then the vendor or team, if it's open source, applies a patch, and then when the patch is available, then the vulnerability is disclosed, unless the person who found the vulnerability is a jerk, in which case sometimes it comes out before. And then someone updates retire.js's database. Someone on the retire.js team updates the database, and then it shows up on my report. And I forgot the second half of the question. Or that was the second half.
Yes, you got it there. The ASAN is address sanitizer. That's more for C++ than .NET. That's one of the comments that came in there.
Okay, I'll look into that.
It's a reference checker, according to Antomi here.
See, this is why I was really looking forward to giving this talk. This is okay with the chat. I can go back and read the chat log, but I was really looking forward to giving this talk with this group because it's developers, and this talk is. I'm kind of a little bit focusing this towards security people because that's one of my goals, is to talk to security people about development as much as I talk to developers about security, and I knew that you all would have some good things that I missed. So I literally have my notepad here, and I'm writing stuff down as we go from your comments. So, and I'll go back through it and read the scroll and see what else everybody's
Another
saying.
question from Antomi here on managing dependencies. So I'm not entirely sure I understand where you're coming from. Sure, there's some not well managed projects. We've all seen them, but I'm hardly hesitant to say run on top of OpenBSD, even if I'm not auditing the code myself. So is this just a third party thing? I think I'm missing some nuance.
No, there's no nuance. It's 50 Shades of Gray, right? I'm not suggesting that all third-party tools are bad and everybody has to start writing in binary. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not suggesting that. The problem is, and you're probably already on top of it. I don't know the person who made the comment initially. You're probably already on top of it. Maybe many people in the audience are. That's fine. But you need to know that a tremendous quantity of software developers have no clue that their supply chain is a problem. So by calling it out, by laying it out there and explaining where the problems are, at least people will get the idea to check, to look into things, to do things like put the dependency track in, or ndepend, or one of those tools into their CI/CD process. In general, development teams, in my experience, the people that I've worked with for the past 15 years or so, believe that if they download it from the internet, it's safe. Now, they don't think that for websites they go to, and they don't think that for executables they have, but they do believe that of the libraries that they use, and it's simply not true. And that's where I'm coming from. So it's a public service announcement is what it is, and also a little bit of promotion for things like retire.js and dependency track, and OWASP in general. I mean, you should use these tools to help you, so you don't have to sit and go read the code all the time. Because that's
Yes. So and Tomi is on the same page with you now, so that's good. There's another question. What does CVE stand for? Did you?
The Common Vulnerability Enumeration. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. If there's any more questions, please put them in the chat there. I'm going to put myself back on.
Somebody said, "Very clap, such applause." I like that quite a bit. So my cats are way too shy to get on camera, but my pet robot just woke up, so I can show my pet robot.
Move some of the pictures over here that came in while you're presenting here. This is Integer Man. This is Matt, and his pet, right there. Again, Bill can't see this, I don't think, unless he's seeing it on Twitch. Phone, yeah. Okay. That's and here's another one that came in of I think this is a dog. I can't remember who posted this one though. Yeah. But there you go. There's someone's dog.
There you go. Yep. Yeah, that's the line that got me was somebody well known. I don't remember who was right this minute, but said, "Okay, there's absolutely no one who is upset if your cat or child interrupts your conference call. That we want to see your cat or child interrupt your conference call. Please, just don't apologize. This is a good thing." And it's true. I mean, it's been my life for many years now, and anybody who's been on the call, who's done stuff with me before, knows that. Especially my daughter will just walk in the room and start talking. So I mean, she didn't tonight, but in general.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We have a bunch of new people at my company who are working from home for basically the first extended period of time, and they are making many apologies, and absolutely not. This is totally fine. It makes my day a little better.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to put you on the spot, Bill, but do you think you could make slides available just in case there's some links that people didn't quite write down?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I will. I'll put them up. I'll share them on OneDrive and put them on. Put a link on the meetup.
Okay, that'd be great. And then I will share the video of this. Oh, yeah. I'll export to YouTube at least and put it on meetup.com as well.
Good deal.
So you can see the video of this afterwards. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Bill. Again, we can't really convey applause. Do I have a sound effect for applause? I don't even remember if I do with my bot, but maybe I should add one. But very much applause for you. Thank you very much for doing this. Now, this is a challenging meetup for us, a challenging user group this month, but I can't think of anyone I'd rather have presenting than Bill for this particular meeting. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And one of my favorite user groups of all time. I think I was like about the 8th or 9th presenter that they had back in the day when, God, I can't even remember. Drew Robbins, is that right?
Yeah, sounds right.
Was the original, I believe
that was way back.
In the first year of the group back in 2002, I presented on the graphics engine in .NET, and it was terrible. It was absolutely horrible. But they had me back again for some reason. I don't know why. So it's always a pleasure to chat with y'all.
Well, Bill's a CONDG all-star for sure. This is, I can't even count how many times he's presented, but thank you very much. So what I want to say is everyone who wants to get in on the raffle, I know this is kind of awkward. I've gotten some comments during the session of people who are unable or unwilling to go on Twitch, which is totally fine. We can work something out next time for that. But if you want to get in the raffle for JetBrains licenses, please put a comment in the chat right now so that you are entered automatically if you chat. And then I will just need to get your email information from you, and then I can get that license over to you. So give you a few more seconds there to get that in. And if you have any questions, or sorry, not questions, but comments or suggestions for next time, please leave them here or leave them in the meetup.com. I'll put the URL up on the screen here so you can see where that is. Meetup.com, CentralOhio.NET Developers Group, and I'll post that link in the chat here. Just leave a comment there on this event, this Snips and Snails one particularly. This is where I'll also post the slides, or Bill will post the slides, I guess, and I'll post a link to the video here in the comments section here below. Okay? So, Alan, Calvin, and Matt, if I have your quorum, if I have a quorum, I'm going to go ahead and run this query, which will pull out a random winner of the first JetBrains license. And if I pick your name, just please let me know that you're here so that you can email me, and so I can get your email address and information to give you that license. All right. So we'll do this twice. Well, we'll pick two winners. I'll pick one at a time. All right. So this is a query here. This is a Couchbase query. All your messages go into, and my Twitch bot stores them in Couchbase, and I can run SQL queries against it. This is a funky looking query here because of the way Twitch stores the timestamp data. But this will, I promise, pull a random person from anyone who's put in a chat message during this presentation. And I also promise that this is not as insecure as Bill alluded to. I'm brave enough to put the IP address right there on the screen, in fact. So have at it, Bill.
You might not want to.
If you can get to this one, then there's clearly an Azure issue. That's all I'll say. All right, so here we go. Very first winner is /roar. /roar, are you in the channel? I see you just posted there. /roar, if you can DM me or your email address, or you can email me at mgroves.com. Just please acknowledge that you are here and you saw that you won the very first JetBrains license. This can be ReSharper, it can be Rider, or any number of the other JetBrains tools, by the way. It's not just ReSharper, by the way. Okay, /roar is in, so you're the first winner. We have one more winner, and I will go ahead and execute that now. If it's /roar, we'll hit the execute button again, but let's hit execute. And it is dev0null. Dev0null, are you still hanging around in the channel? Just want to see a little message from dev0null to acknowledge that you are in fact the winner. If not, I'll have to hit that execute button again. Dev0null, congratulations if you are still around. Because I don't really know how else to contact you if you are not still hanging out on the channel. So dev0null, are you there? Dev0null going once. Dev0null going twice. Oh no. Sorry. Not on the user list. Okay, we're going to hit execute again. Here we go. I'm totally your data type. Just signed up for Twitch today. Are you still around? I'm totally your data type. You are a winner of a JetBrains license. Congratulations. Yes, totally data type. There you are. Send me an email address right here, me@mgroves.com, and I will get you that license. So congratulations. And great. So that was relatively successful, I'd say, giving away those prizes. I don't have any shirts to give away, sorry. If I did, I totally would. I would totally ship them to you. I don't have any shirts to give away. Okay, well, that concludes the very first completely virtual CONDG meeting. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This was truly historic. So thank you very much. You are really our pioneers. Yeah, we're going over to Charlie's afterwards. You can order some O'Charlie's delivery, I guess, if you
Yeah,
want
there we
to.
go. Yeah.
All
Well,
right. Thanks again, Bill. Appreciate it. And if you all want to hang out, I'll just leave this up on the screen for a few minutes. Usually I go and raid somebody else, but this doesn't seem like a raid type of environment. So I'll just hang out here for a few minutes. I'll turn off my audio and you guys can all chat, but I'll let Bill go at this point. Thank you very much,
oh,
Bill.
I clicked stop share and the sound stopped for a minute. I was like, oh no.
Well, now we see you in bigger. You're full
That's
screen
great.
now, Bill.
Wonderful.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hang up Zoom now. Thanks very much, Bill. Appreciate it. Looks like he locked up anyway. All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. And I'm going to go off here too. And I will close down the meeting here in just a minute or so. But thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate it.